So you want to know the ins and outs of managing your money. Well, lucky for you, you're just in time for another episode of Master Your Finances with certified financial planner professional Kurt Baker. Kurt and his panel of experts are here for you and will cover topics from a legal and personal standpoint. They'll discuss tax efficiency, liability, owning, managing, and saving your money, and more. Master Your Finances is underwritten in part by Certified Wealth Management and Investment and Rider University. Rider offers continuing studies programs for adults who need flexibility. Want to add new skills to your resume? Take a continuing studies course at Rider University. Now, let's learn how we can better change our habits with Kurt Baker.
Good morning and welcome back to another edition of Master Your Finances presented by Certified Wealth Management and Investment. I am Kurt Baker, a certified financial planner professional located in Princeton, New Jersey. I can be reached through our website, which is www.cwmi.us, or you can call me directly at 609-716-4700. This week, we're very pleased to have us with Lorette Pruden, PhD, who has helped hundreds of small business owners, sales professionals, entrepreneurs, and community leaders grow their businesses and manage that growth since 2000. She specializes in the formerly corporate. So many small business owners who have worked with her come from a corporate background that she finally wrote a book on it. And how does it help? Working one-on-one in one of her business growth terms, Lorette delivers strategies that work, focus and structure, collaborative teams and accountability. She's a Princeton chemical engineer turned entrepreneur who works in the intersection of business and people processes. The career spans 3 phases so far: chemistry, chemical engineering, and people. So that's a very interesting transition. We have a lot to go on here because I guess I want to start off with, how did you get involved in chemistry, and then what transitioned you to the idea of being an entrepreneur? Most of the chemists that I know, that's not usually the way they function. They're very analytical and they like to go and do their thing, and they tend to be on the other end of the spectrum as far as personality goes. So I'm a little curious about that.
Thank you, Kurt. Thanks for having me. I look forward to this conversation, and that's a great question. People often ask me, usually they start with, how did a nice chemical engineer like you get to be doing what you're doing now? But to start with the chemistry part, I would say that it was really wonder and curiosity is what made me a chemist in the first place. I still vividly remember my 7th grade science teacher who was explaining the concept of the atom to us, and electrons and fundamental building blocks. We didn't know all about quarks and bosons and all that stuff in those days, but electrons, neutrons, and atoms was about as far as it went. But when I got what she was trying to tell us, which is that everything is made of these fundamental particles, I was agog. And I looked at my Formica little desktop, and I looked at the ant farm that we had in the science lab, and I like, everything. She said, yeah. I'm like, oh my God. So I don't know why I didn't become a particle physicist. Well, I do know, because that was even harder than becoming a female chemical engineer, but that's kind of another story. I just was amazed, and and the question that I've carried with me for a long, long time is, how can that be? So I passed my science class in the 7th grade, and I went on to be the only girl in a lot of my classes, my chemistry class, my physics class in high school. I went to college, put a plug in for my college because my reunion's coming up. A lovely liberal arts college named Maryville College in Tennessee, very small, high quality education, best of the best kind of a small college place, and majored in chemistry, where I won a scholarship for being the woman chemistry student with the highest grade point average, which was really easy because I was the only woman chemistry student in my class.
It's great to be first in your class, that's for sure. I think you just might have partially answered my question, because you wonder and curiosity, I think, is something I think a lot of entrepreneurs are connected to. So
absolutely,
you have a curious mind,
right?
And you like to problem solve. It sounds like.
So I went there. I won't belabor the every class I took, but so I did that, and then I moved to New Jersey. And I was fortunate to get a job through networking, which is how we met, with the Mobile Research and Development Corporation. And it was pretty fundamental laboratory research. And I loved it. I loved that. It let me ask all kinds of questions like, how can that be? And then try to figure that out. But I often say my career has had 3 arcs. So the first one is that how can that be piece? What is this from the chemistry point of view? In an oil company, though, there's a lot of engineers, and they ask, how does that work? So I started to think that like that too. How does this work? How can I make this work, whatever it is? So that's the second arc. So that took a while, and incorporated my going back to graduate school and getting my engineering degree and coming back and working for Mobile for a long time. And but towards the end of that, the problem becomes, how do I get people to help me make this work? And so I started to ask those questions. And that got noticed. So I got to move into supervision and management while I was still with Mobile. And I got to learn about teams and cross-functional teams and how they worked and how people work together. And so when Exxon bought Mobile, which was a surprise to most of us on both sides of that transaction, I decided that I really wanted to take that interest of working with people and helping people to perform better. And if you've ever been on a high-performing team, you always want to be on a high-performing team. And so that's kind of what was driving me there. So I started my own consulting practice, and I worked with medium-sized chemical companies, and they're helping build their research teams. And then I crossed paths with some people that were working with more Main Street businesses, and I started to do that. So I still do both of those things, a little bit more of the mainstream business piece now. And I help small business owners and independent sales professionals like yourself, or anybody that needs to build a book of business.
So when you first started doing the consulting, were you still working for ExxonMobil, or was that something you started off on the side a little bit, just kind of extra consulting and things like that? So how did that transition work? Because you had a nice corporate job, it sounds like, right? And also, I'm going to leave the bridge here. It was great,
and I did not do anything on the side. Didn't do anything on the side except my family. It was very much frowned on still, even then, if you had a nice corporate job, to do anything on the side, right? It was considered disloyal. But I had met some other people in other companies, and it was really, I was pushed into it, and that's into entrepreneurship. And that's what happens with a lot of people. They weren't planning for it. They hadn't really spent a lot of time thinking about it. We find ourselves on the street, sometimes by choice, often by circumstance. And the question is like, now what? Right.
Well, that's kind of what I was getting to, is I know a lot of people that are interested. You hear a lot of people in large corporations that are like, I'd love to be on my own. I'd love to be my own boss, et cetera. But making that transition from that really kind of secure structure where lots of things are done for you and you kind of focus on your one little niche. And then all of a sudden an entrepreneur, it's like everything, right? You're the CEO and the janitor. You have to do it all. That's a very, very different lifestyle. So how did you, I guess, mentally, and then also, of course, financially, because you have that nice base, and then you go off and now you're doing things all on your own, and you have no idea when your next paycheck may come necessarily. So how did you start that little process from those perspectives?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. If you work for a major corporation and you lose your job because of a merger, which is what happened to me, usually there's some pretty good severance stuff that comes with that. So that's how I did it. I'd been there a long time, and Mobile was quite generous, and so I had a cushion for a while. It only lasts a while, right? So you got to
Sure.
plan for that. So Kurt can help you plan for that part of the transition. The other things you're talking about, though, the having to wear all the hats, the having to make all the decisions, those are really new skills for a lot of people. And in my book that you mentioned, formerly Corporate, the subtitle is Mindset Shifts for Success in Your Own Business. And some of those mindset shifts are about those kind of things. I call them formerly
Lorette,
corporate outlooks.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely want to get into that. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk about what you've written about and exactly how you can start that transition from corporate to entrepreneur. You're listening to Master Your Finances. We'll be right back.
This is Master Your Finances with Kurt Baker, Certified Financial Planner Professional. Learn about tax efficiency, liability, owning, managing, and saving your money, and more from Kurt and his experienced panel of guests. Master Your Finances is underwritten in part by Certified Wealth Management and Investment and Rider University. Rider University offers flexible education for adult learners. For more information, it's rider.edu/nextstep.
Welcome back. You're listening to Master Your Finances. I'm Kurt Baker here with Lorette Pruden, PhD, and we're talking about transitioning from corporate to entrepreneur. And Lorette is an expert as you lived it, and now you coach others on that. So you want to tell us a little bit about that transition and how you started doing that in your expertise.
Yeah, there's a lot more to that transition than most people think. Some of the myths that you hear when you're going to do that is, oh, just get your first consulting gig, and then people will just refer you, and then it'll be good, and it just goes on forever from there. And you and I both know that's not exactly how that works. You can get your first gig, customer, whatever you want to call it, and you might do a great job for them. And they may pay you right on time and say, thank you very much, this is wonderful. And they don't ever want to talk to you again. They don't have any more needs. You solved all their problems, or they don't want anybody to know that they needed any help. So they don't want to refer you. Lots of ways that can go off the rails, right? But that's what other people do. For ourselves as entrepreneurs, especially if you've come from a corporate background, but a lot of these apply to just people that just, have started a business without that big corporate thing. And let me say that when I say corporate, I include government and nonprofits and any bigger organization that has structure and hierarchies and silos and departments and all that kind of stuff. Because as a solopreneur, you are all the departments. You are all of the hats. You have to do everything or find somebody to do it. And maybe towards the end of this, we can talk a little bit about how you can do that without breaking the bank, because that's a big financial commitment to start to take on employees and things. Mm-hmm. But, most people who have been employees are really good at executing on somebody else's strategy and spending somebody else's money, and not so great at creating their own strategy or finding their own money to fund their business, right? I heard somebody say yesterday, "Oh, my business is going to start right off and it's going to go. I'm going to have coders, and they're going to do the coding, and they'll get billed by the hour, and so it'll be great." And I'm like, "What about you?" He said,
"Yeah, I'll have to agree with that. I mean, given that I've been an entrepreneur pretty much my whole life, it's you can get very excited and very optimistic, but when it actually the rubber hits the road, it's a very different. There's a lot of bumps in that road, and a lot of potholes that you need to be.
There's a lot of bumps in that road,
and you just need to be ready for all of that. It's all good, but you can't be. You're not a pessimist, but you certainly have to be aware that there are going to be downsides, and you have to prepare for that, right? I mean, you want to wear your seatbelt when you're driving the car, of course.
Absolutely,
things are going to happen. And,
absolutely.
you need to be ready.
One of them. So one of the things that people think is that they know about taking risks.
Mm-hmm.
They say, I'm a risk taker because otherwise I would never have jumped off this cliff, right? And the thing I didn't like about my corporate strictures is that they wouldn't let me I couldn't take any risks, And then you find out that it's really risky to be a small business owner. Now the risks you're taking are not that you might make a little mistake, or that you might not get the next promotion. The other guy might get the next promotion. You might be risking the house. You might be risking the kids' college funds, right? You're risking a lot if you start to be an entrepreneur. And so it's just such a completely different level emotionally and financially and tactically, practically, right? That hardly anybody is prepared for it. It's been my experience. Oh, this is a lot harder than I thought. Oh, my severance is running out, right?
Yeah.
Until this recent difficulty with the virus, there's lots of difficulties with the virus, but the one thing about that was it was so bad that even the government reached out to help independent business owners and independent contractors and stuff. Before that, you risk all that too. There's no unemployment insurance under normal circumstances for people who are in business for themselves. There's no economic injury, idle loans, whatever I don't know the acronym off the top of my head, but There's none of that, right? You're on your own. And that's pretty scary.
Yeah, I'll have to agree with that 100%. I mean, when I started doing this, I was young, so there was a little bit less downside where the family wasn't all in place, and the overhead was relatively low and things like that. But especially when somebody's in a period of their life where there's a lot of people depending on them. I think one of the things that entrepreneurs do, they talk about how we're risk takers, but I think they also I think the part they miss sometimes is we quantify the risk and we pay attention to what the downsides are of the risks that you're taking, because it's okay to take a risk, but you also have to pay attention to what is the downside and how do I manage that risk in a way to optimize the potential for success and minimize the damage that may occur if you happen to be making some mistakes. And I think you're going to talk about this a little bit, as I know that one of the things that I've noticed over the many, many years is we tend to be a little too freelance, and you kind of have to come back and structure your life a little bit so that you manage it a little bit more like a larger corporation where you get all these little pieces done and be a little more organized than maybe people think. They kind of think of an entrepreneur as, you can go off and do whatever you want. Well, that's true, but you need to manage all these things so you get all these little pieces done. They all have to get done, right? So you got to be organized about it.
That's another great point. I'll put a plug in for you and me here, or our professions. We need to have somebody helping us look at our financial plans, both long-term retirement stuff or just day-to-day business expenditures, who is not us, because we just don't see what we don't see. Your tax accountant, your financial planner, your business coach, your bookkeeper, all of those people are incredibly important to staying on the rails with your business. And the sooner you can begin to build those relationships, the better off you'll be.
No, I agree. You actually bring up an interesting point, because every survey you see, when you have experts in your life, whether that's a CPA, an attorney, a coach. I mean, think about like a professional athlete. Every professional athlete has a personal coach, right? It's You think, well, they already know what they're doing. They're the best at what they do. Well, Tiger Woods has changed his stroke I don't know how many times playing golf, right? So it's not about, well, do you know what you're doing? It's, can you be the best you are? And it's a lot cheaper from a time perspective and monetary perspective to use other people's expertise to help you manage what you're doing and maybe optimize it, and then prevent those mistakes, because that's the part that takes a hard recovery, right? When you lose money or you lose time, you can't get that back. And that's why these teams, I know that you probably work similar. I mean, we all work in teams. Like a wealth management firm works with attorneys and CPAs and coaches and insurance agents and all these people, because everybody brings their own piece of expertise, and then you put it all together and you share information and experiences, and then the client gets a much, much better outcome. And it's really about the value that's added. And time again, all the studies you see, people who have these types of teams in place do far better over the long haul than ones that don't and try to do it all on their own. They just don't get the same results, the majority of them. Very few people are able to do it on their own. You really need that expertise long term to help you.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I'll come back to that in just a second. I wanted to say that what you said about structure, right? People say all the time, oh, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to work in my bunny slippers. Well, now everybody's been working in their bunny slippers for a year and a half. So maybe you like that, maybe you didn't. But that there used to be a program 20 years ago called Bunny Slipper Boot Camp. And it was teaching you how to work from home, right? It's not all it's cracked up to be. It has some great things about it, but one of the things that it's not cracked up to be is how great it is to not have any structure, to not have anybody to hold you accountable. That's one place where a team and a coach really helps. We all are reasonably proficient and efficient at managing our time, but not always managing our priorities. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things I find I work with people a lot is, so you can make a to-do list and write down your to-do list and check everything off. And at the end of the day, you think it's been a great day and you've spent all your time on little diddly stuff and you didn't do anything important. You didn't call your client list, your prospect list. You didn't actually write out the new program that you're putting together. You didn't do a whole bunch of things. And that's very easy to slip into that. I joke with people that come to work with me. It's like, oh, you thought you'd not have a boss, right? It'd be so great to not have a boss. And then you hired yourself. People say this about themselves all the time. Then I hired myself and I found out I'm a lousy boss. And then you need me because you need some kind of accountability partner. It's not so much a boss. You're the business owner, you make the decisions. But how about, did you think about this? Did you think about that? What would happen if this? And a lot of times people have a hard time thinking on their own.
No, I agree, Lorette. I mean, we're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna come back and talk about how you manage the structure of you really do have to have structure. It might not be the corporate structure, but it's going to be your structure. And there are benefits to that. We're going to talk a little bit more about that when we come back. You're listening to Master Your Finances. We'll be right back.
This is Master Your Finances with Kurt Baker, Certified Financial Planner Professional. Learn about tax efficiency, liability, owning, managing, and saving your money, and more from Kurt and his experienced panel of guests. Master Your Finances is underwritten in part by Certified Wealth Management and Investment and Rider University. Rider University offers flexible education for adult learners. For more information, it's rider.edu/nextstep.
Welcome back. You're listening to Master Your Finances. I'm Kurt Baker here with Lorette Pruden, a PhD. And when we ended, we were talking a little bit about how when people leave the corporate world, they think, oh, I want to do my own thing. I don't like the structure of the corporation. But what really kind of happens is you end up creating your own structure. So there are benefits to that because now you get to do things the way you want to. However, it's still really, really critical for those of us that are entrepreneurs to have a structure. You can't go with no structure. And so it's really a great thing if you do it correctly, because now you get to do things the way you would like to do it. I mean, do you like to work in the afternoons or in the mornings or late at night? I mean, and what days do you want to do which things and things like that? So you can really be focused on, but it all still has to get done. And that's where Lorette, it really helps people with that. And I know that's one of the issues that a lot of people have when they go from having other people telling them, here's your list of things to do. You're going to come back to me next Thursday and tell me how you're going along, and we're going to have a meeting and everybody's going to get together. Well, now you're the only person in that meeting and you got to do the same thing, right? So that's where Lorette would come in and try to help you out a little bit, right?
Yeah, so that's a rude awakening for a lot of people, but if you don't face that, like you were saying early in the last segment, Kurt, people don't do as well if they don't have some structure and some support. So that's a great segue into what I like to talk about in mastermind teams that I run. That term is an old one. It was coined by Napoleon Hill in the 30s of the last century. So he's a very interesting person. He wrote Think and Grow Rich. If you've never read that, I highly recommend it. There is a lot of guys from that personal development and business development world in that couple of decades there in the roaring 20s and then the aftermath that have a lot of wisdom to share. But anyway, so he coined the idea of a mastermind team. And what he said is that when you get a group of people together, they put their heads together. And we know this, we have this in our language, right? We're going to put our heads together. We're going to come up with a better idea. He said, then you have better ideas. You have more power. You have the bigger visions, and you have help to implement all of that stuff. In a really high functioning, as mentioned, high functioning teams before, in a high functioning mastermind team, people are really helping each other with their business, helping with options, helping set priorities, helping with resources, either ideas or websites or other experts that can help you out. I solved this problem, but I don't know how to solve that problem. Oh, I solved that problem, but I don't know how to solve this problem. And that's the way they go. And so I love to work with mastermind teams. I also work with people privately. There's the reasons to do that. And it kind of depends on your personality as well. But if you value other people's input, then working in a mastermind team is a phenomenal way to actually run your business. And I could name for you, but I won't, a whole bunch of my clients that you probably know that are still working with people that were in their mastermind team 5, 10, 15 years ago. Not formally, they're not employees of each other. They're resources and support and accountability partners.
That's a great concept. And I know people like that think about these things, but how does somebody get started with like going, let's say somebody says, oh, gee, that sounds like a great idea. I think I'd like to do that. What do you think be some of the kind of the first steps to do that? If they want to join because there's a lot of different ones out there, right? All kinds of specialty ones and, you know, more generic ones and things like that.
Yeah, there are. And I'm going to be self-serving here and say you should talk to me. And you can do that by going to revyourrevenue.com. I'll spell that REVYOUR revenue.com. And you'll get my, what is the name of it now? I forgot already. Jeez. Checklist for how to find new ways to make profits in your business quickly. And then you can talk to me if you want to. You can make an appointment there. But I would suggest that you try a few. You can, what makes them work is they're intimate. They don't have to be local. I used to run all mine to, face to face. I called myself the local coach for local business, but then COVID happened and everything went on Zoom. So I don't have to be geographically constrained anymore.
Well, don't business owners sometimes worry about, well, if I get in one of these mastermind teams, aren't I going to like give away all my secrets? That's the kind of thing you hear, right? But I know it's the opposite. Would you want to speak to that a little bit? Because people are like, well, if I get in one of these
Sure.
teams and I start talking about how my business runs and what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong, isn't that going to be like embarrassing? Am I going to give away my secrets? Is going to negatively impact me? I mean, how do you speak to people who are like hesitant about sharing how their business runs and what's going on and maybe showing the defects, so to speak, that maybe need to get fixed?
One of the, well, with confidentiality agreements, for one thing, although they're, I don't know how, there's a debate about how legally enforceable those are, but absolutely making it clear that we're talking about each other's businesses in this room, in this moment, and none of us want to hear our business laundry out on the street at the chamber meeting next week or anything. And I've been doing this for 20 years, and I have never had anybody come back to me and say that their confidence was breached. So that's one thing. Yeah, we say things that are embarrassing. People cry, people laugh, but people cry and laugh at the same time. We had a person who said, well, I don't know, this is really hard. Do I have to keep doing this like marketing stuff? I just want people to come and sign up. And the whole room burst into laughter while she was in tears. And then she's like, we said, yeah, like we've all been there. It's this spiral. We go around and around. Oh, this is great. I love this. Isn't this a great life being an entrepreneur? Oh my God, this is awful. I can't stand it. I have to quit. I'm going to go get a job. And that happens. Oh, I could go on about this, so I don't want to, because I think you might have a couple more questions. It's a matter of trust, though. Really, you have to trust your coach, and then you build, and that you have to build that. I mean, people seem to trust me pretty quickly, so that's good. And I know that I have a reputation of never talking about people's business details. I've had people say that in networking events to me. Oh, Lorette will tell a story, but she'll never put a name to it. So trust.
Yeah, you brought up some very important facts. Yeah. So I know they work, and I guess that was what I was getting to, because people can kind of screen for it. You join one, and if you don't think it's quite your match, there's other options out there, and they tend to be, as you point out, people don't get invited to these things unless others feel that they're going to actually contribute and actually keep everything under wraps, so to speak. It's a very tight-knit group. It tends to be. And they're all looking to help each other. And it's one of those things where we kind of know what we're supposed to do a lot of times, but it's about implementing it and finding the best ways to make all of this happen. I mean, I know we all were supposed to brand, and we're supposed to advertise, and we're supposed to reach out and all these things, but it really gets down to the nuts and bolts about what's working now and what are we all seeing out there, and how can we help each other improve. Because you tend not to really step on each other's feet, so to speak. You really are kind of working just to make each other better. It's all about making each other better, really, is what it's about.
Exactly. And the one thing that people say they didn't like about mastermind groups often is that there was a jerk in there. And so my job is to make sure the jerks aren't in there. Part of my job, or to gently ease them out if they turn out. But I've gotten pretty good at sniffing them out now. So, because some people are not cut out for this kind of work, and that's where private coaching is a good option for some people.
Right. And you just pointed out the other option. I mean, when it's necessary, I know these groups will essentially remove somebody who's not working the way they want it to work. I mean, they're all there to help each other. If they feel like one member is not contributing and is negatively bringing them down, they'll just eliminate them nicely and say, well, I don't think this is for you. I think you need to find another group. And that's the end of it. But so ultimately they work, right? But you may have to tweak it a little bit. But the concept.
But I wouldn't worry too much about that. If any of this sounds appealing to our listeners, let's have a conversation about it, because we don't have time to do that today. I do want to say one more thing about money. I don't know where our time is here, but I want to get this in, which is, because this is about mastering your finances, right? You have to sell something to be in business. And that is a huge roadblock for a lot of new entrepreneurs. They don't want to sell anything. They just want people to buy.
And that's a great thing. We're gonna talk about that in depth here in a few minutes. So we're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna come back and explain how you do that. You're listening to Master Your Finances. We'll be right back.
This is Master Your Finances with Kurt Baker, Certified Financial Planner Professional. Learn about tax efficiency, liability, owning, managing, and saving your money, and more from Kurt and his experienced panel of guests. Master Your Finances is underwritten in part by Certified Wealth Management and Investment and Rider University. Rider University offers flexible education for adult learners. For more information, it's rider.edu/nextstep.
Welcome back. You're listening to Master Your Finance. I'm Kurt Baker here with Lorette Pruden, PhD. And just before we left, we were talking about how the strategy that you need to do as far as are you selling something? Are you buying something? What are you doing? You want to explain that a little bit, Lorette, as far as what business owners think they're supposed to be doing and what they actually should be doing as far as their product or service goes?
Sure. One of the great myths of starting your own business is the one about customers beating a path to your door. And I always say that path is pretty faint at the beginning, and it can get pretty faint again if you don't do something to bring customers to your door. So that includes marketing and branding and all of that kind of stuff so that people know who you are. We don't have time to go into that today, but there's lots of great marketing and branding experts in our community, in your community, that you can talk to. But ultimately, you have to offer something that people might want, that might be useful to them. And you have to be persuasive about how you offer that to them. And then, in the words of the great sales trainer, Zig Ziglar, maybe they want it, maybe they don't. Zig Ziglar, who I had the privilege of meeting when I was with the National Speakers Association. We talked about that a little bit earlier. He was quite elderly at the time, but I got to see him in action. And he says, if you have something that is of value, that you believe could be of value to the person that you're talking to, whether it's a vacuum cleaner, he did door-to-door sales back in the 30s, or an encyclopedia set, or coaching services, or financial services. If you have something that you believe might help those people, you have a moral obligation to offer it to them. They have no obligation to buy it from you. And that, when I heard that on a tape, listening in my car, doing my, on the job education as an entrepreneur, that resolved a lot of things for me that I was struggling with and that I know a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with in terms of sales. I don't want to be pushy. I don't want to be the used car salesman. I don't want to be smarmy. I don't want to sell you things that aren't real. I don't want to sell you 10 ways to make $1 million in a week kind of thing, just because you might click on that clickbait stuff. If you have something, a service or a good that could genuinely help people, we have a moral obligation to offer that in the marketplace. And then
you bring up a point. You bring up a point that I often hear about. It's like if you don't believe in your product and service, the clients aren't going to believe in it. So don't go out and start a business or a service, something you don't actually believe in and really feel strongly about. Because if you don't feel strongly about what you do and what benefit you're offering to others, they're going to notice that. They're going to sense that, right? And they're going to know you're not true to what you're trying to do here. And so you really need to get involved in something that you truly believe in and do it really, really well. And so, I mean, that's just, you just reminded me of that point when you were talking just now. I think it's really important you're in the right business.
Absolutely. And you really need to believe in it and love doing it, because this is really hard to be an entrepreneur. It's very difficult. It's fun. I love it. I think you love it. We've been at this for a while. There's reasons we keep throwing ourselves out there. But you have to really love what you do and feel like you're having an impact, a positive impact on people and their lives and on the world to keep going with this. So that's a really important point. I also wanted to bring up that I saw some statistics the other day that said the number of people over 50 who are starting businesses since the pandemic started is higher than it has ever been before. People are making these decisions. They're thinking, I've had this job for whatever ever. I always dreamed of doing XYZ. I want to do or I'm just tired of this, or I need to be home with my family. I need something I can do on my own. It's just whatever the reasons are, more and more people are doing this. And all the more reason for those of us who can help those people get started and get going and keep going, to get ourselves out there so that they can see it. It's very exciting times in the small business world, and there's lots of help available. And I would like, if we have a couple minutes, to tell you about the way that I coach small businesses on that issue of building a team. Remember, we talked about that a few minutes ago, right? Hiring. When do I hire? That's one of the questions people ask all the time. Should I hire anybody? When do I hire? I waited too long to hire some help. People will say that too. And so my solution to that is something I call a starburst business, which is to build the kind of support teams that you were talking about in an earlier segment, Kurt. Not only the financial advisor, the attorney, the accountant, the bookkeeper, the coach, everybody needs those. But then people need people to do services for them that they don't need full time. So for instance, if you're a book publisher, you might not need, there's 57 varieties, 57 varieties of different editors. If you get into that world, you don't need 57 of those people full time in your business, but you might need some of them sometime on every book. You might need a graphic designer for your branding. You might need a marketing person for your marketing. You might need, depending on whatever your business is, there are specialties that you will need. The typical way people go about doing that is they hire a subcontractor, right? They say, okay, I want you to build my website. And they do, and you pay them, and then 2 years later or 18 months later or whatever, your website's out of date, it's old, they're gone, you don't know where they are. They got all the, this is a worst case scenario, right? But they got all the keys to the kingdom, and you have to start completely over. Instead of having a reciprocal relationship with that person, maybe they did a really good job for you. Maybe you refer some business to them. Maybe you become significant referral partners. And so I'm using my hands here but I know this is an audio program, sorry. But if you have the two of you, right, and you work back and forth together, then I have my starburst and you have your starburst, and they begin to interconnect. And pretty soon you can have a really nice constellation, I like to call it, to keep with the star metaphor, network of people that you trust, that are not just waiting for you to send them more work. That's what the contractor relationship is, right? Just like, I'll put the tile in your bathroom and I hope you do another bathroom soon, and I'll do the tile there. And in between, I'll never hear from them again, right? These reciprocal starburst relationships are extremely powerful in small business. And Ivan Meisner, who is the founder of BNI, actually, I like to say this, he wrote a blurb for my book. He really did. And he says that this starburst idea is the new wave of the 21st century business, small business. And I believe that, and I see that happening all the time. Those people I mentioned before, my clients that are still working with each other from years ago, those I can draw all those starbursts out and see who's connected to who and how that works. It's cost effective. It's intellectually effective. It's idea effective. It's problem solvingly effective. And so I'm all for it. Build yourself a starburst business.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I guess you made me think of the term centers of influence, right? So, I mean, you end up dealing with people you like to deal with. And I think a lot of us do that. So, I mean, we hear about how like everything's, on Google or whatever, but certain jobs and certain professions, people are not going to do it unless, or they would, even now they would prefer to have a direct referral of somebody who's actually done business with somebody who can kind of vet them and say, hey, this person did a great job on the website. They did a great job as my CPA or whatever the case may be. Because now you've got somebody who's actually done business with them. And especially small business owners don't have time really to redo things. They just need to get it right the first time and move on so they can focus on what their area of expertise is and provide whatever product or service that they offer, and allow these other experts to kind of fill in those areas that are important, but they don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it because they have their own part of the world that they're kind of focused on.
Right. And if you operate this way, you don't have to be vetting your website person or your graphic designer all the time. That takes a lot of time and energy. That's like hiring. That hiring is hard and expensive and risky too, right?
Agree.
So.
Well, this has been the time has flown by, Lorette. I mean, any final couple words here? We have a minute or two, and we appreciate you having you on today.
I just would say, if you've listened to this and you're taking away the idea that you need a financial planner and a business coach and a lot of other people that you know, like, and trust to do business with, think about building what building that starburst would look like for your own business. And I would love to hear from you on revyourrevenue.com. Thank you very much, Kurt, for having me. This has been a great conversation, and I look forward to listening to myself and some of your other people. I also listened to a couple of your podcasts, and they're fascinating conversations. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks again, Lorette. We really appreciate you coming on. You've been listening to Master Your Finances. You can subscribe to this podcast and all the podcasts by going to www.masteryourfinances.us. Remember, together we can master your finances so you can enjoy financial peace of mind.
That was this week's episode of Master Your Finances with Kurt Baker, Certified Financial Planner Professional. Tune in every Sunday at 9 a.m. to expand your knowledge in building and managing your wealth. Missed an episode? No worries. You can subscribe to a free weekly episode of Master Your Finances to listen to on your favorite podcasting platform. Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, whatever. Master Your Finances is underwritten in part by Certified Wealth Management and Investment and Rider University. Rider offers continuing studies programs for adults who need flexibility. Want to add new skills to your resume? Take a continuing studies course at Rider University.